So this is my first post here, and I figured I'll share the most recent thing that happened to me. I just moved not too long ago to a house on the other side of the city. I was barely even settled in when this happened. One of the first things I took care of was to get my home security up and running. I am a very cautious person because of things that have happened in the past, and I don't feel comfortable without cameras and motion detectors. I was on my second day in the house, as in actually living here, with everything set up. I was at my desk working on my newest Unreal Engine project when I glanced at the monitors for my cameras, which showed a man standing in the street in front of my house. He was by my mailbox, and I watched for a minute as he reached towards my box, then stopped like he was hesitating, and looked up at my house. I found it odd and decided to see what was going on. I wasn't too concerned as I own a 45 and had it with me. By the time I got out there, which wasn't very long, the guy was gone. He already crossed the street to the next block and was walking pretty quickly. I didn't think much of it. I really figured he just had the wrong house or something simple like that. I checked the mailbox because he was right there and it was still empty. I very briefly entertained the notion that he had placed something inside, maybe something grisly or frightening, but that was probably a result of reading too much Stephen King. It didn't take long for me to forget about the incident entirely and bury myself into my computer. Hours passed, and before I knew it, midnight had come and gone. I decided that it was time to go and relax, and went to lay on the couch and watch some TV. About 20 minutes later, I started hearing noises from outside. I pulled up my phone and checked my cameras, but there seemed to be nothing going on outside, and the motion detectors hadn't triggered, so I went back to my show. I looked up just a little later to see a man looking through my window, staring right at me. I yelled, "What the fuck?" and jumped off the couch, grabbing my 45 off the table. He wasn't at the window anymore, so I went outside to the side of my house and didn't see him. I checked my entire property, but the man was gone. The camera showed that he had ran into the backyard and hopped the fence to the alley. He was pretty fast about it too. I realized it was the man from earlier and wondered what the hell was going on. I debated filing a police report, but decided not to. I haven't had a wonderful experience in the past with law enforcement, and tend to avoid that if at all possible. I did note at the time that none of my motion sensors had been triggered when this happened, and figured that they were probably not set up right. I didn't want to check them as it was early in the morning and dark, so I planned to do it later in that day. I ended up dozing off on the couch and woke up to the motion sensor alarm going off. I'm not a heavy sleeper and it didn't take me long to respond. All in all, it was probably a few seconds before I got outside. It was, of course, this man again. He's running down the street in the same direction as the first time. I found something quite bothersome on the footage. The man hadn't triggered the motion alarm. He had been looking in my window for several minutes already by the time the alarm went off, apparently watching me sleep. The alarm was triggered on the other side of my house by the neighbor's dog of all things. To this day, I don't have answers. A neighbor of mine saw the footage and thought it was the son of the house's former resident, who was known to be pretty unstable and disturbed. I did file a police report, and of course, nothing came of it. They didn't waste too much time and energy looking into it. I have no idea how he avoided triggering the motion sensors, or what he wanted from me. I do keep my windows closed and curtains drawn now. Never know who's watching. I was staying over at my grandma's house with two of my sisters for a few days, while my grandma was visiting a friend. They were discharged from the hospital and needed someone to take care of her, so my grandma went to help. She had a good security system, with lights on the sides of the house that sense movement. She has a lot of cats, but they've never set the lights off before. I was in the kids' room. My eldest sister was in my grandmother's room, right across the hall from mine, and my sister Haley was in the room right next to hers. I have a pretty big thing about making sure all doors and curtains are shut. I can't sleep without knowing that I've checked them at least twice. When my sisters went to bed around 10 p.m., I stayed up until about 1 in the morning, just drawing. I finally decided to go to bed at that time, so I was just about to take my contacts out when I decided to check the doors and curtains again. I got out of bed and made my way to the front door. I checked it and moved on to the kitchen, where the back door was, and did the same. There was one more door that led outside, and that was in the laundry room. I had just walked in when I looked across the room to see a window. The security light was on, which meant that someone tripped it. I didn't even make it into the room when I heard the doorknob jiggling. I don't mean like they were trying the door and then realized it was locked. I mean, whoever was on the other side was trying their damnedest to get in. I thought the doorknob was going to give in. My heart dropped. I knew it wasn't my sisters. I saw them through the open door sleeping, and there's no need for them to be out at 1 a.m. I couldn't move. I was so scared. I could clearly hear whoever was on the other side trying to get in. I didn't have my phone with me, and I couldn't call my sisters because I didn't know if the person on the other side would hear me. The thought did cross my mind to look, but they would have seen me, and I don't know what would have happened if they did. Eventually, the rattling stopped and I ran back to my room, where my knife was. I stayed up for hours listening to the house and for whoever was trying to get in. The next day, I called my dad, and he told me I shouldn't tell any of the others. It would freak my grandma out, and my sisters wouldn't have wanted to stay. I never did tell them what happened. To this day, I have no idea who was at the door. Whoever it was, I know their intentions were not good. If somebody really needed help, why would they go to the back door and not the front? This happened when I was around 6 years old. When I was little, I would get scared to sleep in my bedroom at night, and I wasn't a big fan of the dark. I usually ended up sleeping in the living room. My mom's bedroom door was right off it, just in case I needed her. My dad was overseas at the time, so it was just me and my mom in the house. She was also pregnant with my little sister at the time. I would say it was around 1:30 to 2 o'clock in the morning. I woke up out of a dead sleep. It took me a little bit to finally come to and sit up. As I was looking around the room, I looked at the front door. We had a storm door, and then an old wood door with like 4 to 6 of those glass little windows. When I looked over the door, there was someone standing on the porch, looking through the glass. Their hands cuffed around their face, trying to block out the light from the porch so they could see in the house. I hurried up and laid back down, pulling the covers over my face, like he couldn't see me right in front of him. I was 6. I was scared. I felt like I was frozen. I wanted to yell for my mom, but I didn't want the guy to hear me. I probably lay there for 5 minutes, then looked up again. He was gone. I got up and ran to my mom's room, waking her up and telling her that someone was on the front porch. It didn't take much for her to believe, as we had got some random calls from people telling us that they were going to break into our house and that they knew that my dad was gone. She grabbed her phone and called the police. They all knew what was going on, considering we lived in a small town and knew everyone here. It felt like it only took 2 seconds for them to get to my house. They checked the yard and the building in the back. They went through the alleyway and the blocks around us. They didn't find anyone, so finally we moved in with my grandparents until my dad came back. I'm 24 now, and I moved back to my hometown where this all took place. Sometimes I still think about waking up and seeing someone looking into my house. But creepy old man looking through my door at night. I'm glad we never met again, and I hope we never do. Over the past few years living in this house, many strange things have happened. Mostly noises, loud banging, or knocks on the window. The manhole cover in the ceiling being opened up constantly, even when there had been no storms. Stuff like that. I'm a bit antisocial, and I don't necessarily answer the door if I'm not expecting anyone. We never have unexpected visitors, and our neighbor has our mobile number, so a knock on the door is usually a door-to-door salesman or a religious nut. One day, I heard knocking on the door in the morning. I was working, and my kids were still asleep. I peeked out the window, and there was an old man there, and he was standing awkwardly in the entranceway. I decided he didn't look like a psychopath, nor did he look like he was going to give me a Jesus pamphlet, so I decided to answer the door and see what he wanted. He apologized for knocking because he had noticed my kids were asleep in their room through the side window. Then he asked me if he could pick some of the fruit from the vines in our front yard. I thought it was a super weird request, but didn't really care, so I said sure thing. I went into the room to check on the kids instinctively, and when I came back out of the room, he was gone. I never noticed a car. Not a big deal, I know, but before this happened, another day when I checked on my kids, also early in the morning, I had just woken up and again was the only person awake. I peeked out the window from my kid's room, and through the window I saw a tall, lanky, very old man at the door. I generally have no idea if it was the same man, because I have pretty bad face blindness, and this was months earlier. I held my breath and watched him through the window. He didn't knock, nor did he seem like he was planning to knock. He instead was sort of taking side steps and looking at our flower bed, which was full of weeds. He barely looked towards the front door at all, and just kind of calmly walked around in a very small area, nowhere near our fruit vine by the way, just near our front door. Because he hadn't knocked, I was super confused. I watched it for a few minutes before I decided to confront him and ask him what the fuck. My kid's room is right next to the front door. It's maybe 7 feet from it. I walked the 3 or so steps from my kid's door to the front door and swung it open. No one was there. We have bay-type windows showing the side of the house and the backyard, so I could instantly see he wasn't in the backyard or the side of the house. I walked out the front, down the short path onto the driveway, and then onto the road, consistently looking back to make sure no one snuck in the front door. No cars were driving, no neighbors had anyone at their door. I even checked the other side of the house. The dude had literally vanished into thin air. No idea what this is all about, but I thought I would share my story. Hey guys, this is my first post here. I definitely have other encounters, but this just happened a few hours ago, and I knew I had to post it. So I'm currently at college in Boston, and I have an apartment on the North End with my buddy, both 21-year-old males. My girlfriend came up for the weekend to visit, and we were doing our normal weekend things, drinking and just hanging out. My roommate convinced us to watch The Green Inferno because it had just made its way to Netflix, and I had been meaning to watch it. Horribly fucked up movie, but pretty good if you like gruesome horror, but also don't mind bad acting. 3/4 through the movie, I kept hearing banging noises coming from what sounded like inside our building. At first, I ignored it, thinking I was just hearing things, or it was noise from our busy main street that our apartment building is on. But after a few times, I thought I heard a girl scream. I paused the movie and asked my roommate and my girlfriend if they heard it, and they both did, but we shrugged it off as random kids getting drunk. I heard it twice more, and it wasn't sitting right with me, so I paused it and said to my roommate, "Let's take a walk down the stairs and check the halls." We left our place on the top floor and headed towards the stairs where we saw a man who looked to be in his mid to late 20s. He was sitting on the stairs outside an apartment and he looked like he was a mess. We asked him if this was his place, and he kind of said yes, but not definitively, and he sounded a bit drunk. We had no reason not to believe him, so we went back to our room. However, right when we got back, I remembered that the only people that lived in that unit were 2 or 3 girls, and my roommate agreed. We decided to head back out there, and at this point, my girlfriend was freaked out. We approached him again and asked, "Are you sure this is your place?" He stood up and said yeah, and then proceeded to aggressively bang on the door multiple times. When he stood up, I immediately noticed poop stains on his white jeans and pointed it out to my roommate. We are both in shape and realized right away if anything happened, we could easily take this guy. At this point, we both said that we think he should leave to this guy because clearly that wasn't his place and he was not at all there. I mean, the dude shit himself. He looked at us, then back at the door, where he tried 5 different keys to unlock it. Obviously, none of them worked, so we firmly told him to leave the building. The whole time, he didn't really argue with us, and never gave us firm answers, further proving our point that he messed up, and didn't belong here. At this point, something must have clicked in his head, so he started heading down the stairs with us, closely in tow, making sure that he left while plugging our noses and gagging on the stench of his poop pants. When we were inside of the landing, at the base of the stairs, the sight we saw made our stomachs drop. We saw a phone with earbuds on the top shelf that sits there, a hoodie strewn across the floor, with a mask a few feet away, a satchel-looking bag even further away, and a package that I'd seen in the lobby earlier. As soon as I saw this, I thought the absolute worst, as it looked like a struggle had taken place. I immediately asked him in an aggressive tone, "What the fuck did you do?" And I could tell he was scared now. He refused to answer me and tried to bang and open an apartment door on the first floor, claiming that that was his place. He then went to collect his things from the floor, and just to be sure, I made him unlock his iPhone right in front of me to prove that it was his. It was a Touch ID, and he opened it. We did not like the way he was acting, so we kept insisting that he should leave, as he formed answers back that were barely English. After this, he proceeded to walk towards the back of our building in a rather brisk pace. There is a tighter staircase at the back which leads to all floors, as well as an alley out back of our building. This is probably the strangest part, as very few people know about this exit to our building, but he headed there with speed and confidence. My roommate followed close behind to make sure he left and the back door shut firmly, as once it's shut you can't open it from outside, and I was far back gagging on the stench. The alley behind our building goes behind a restaurant that connects with a dirt parking lot that is accessible to the main street in the north end that our building faces. After this, we went out the front door together and walked around to the back door to make sure that this man was completely gone. We slipped a note under the door of the girls saying that we saw the man and made him leave, and to come knock or text us if they needed anything, as we wanted to make sure they were okay. Luckily, this man left without any problem occurring between him, my roommate, and I, as that would have definitely ended in an ugly manner. We knew the girls lived there, and this man was giving off terrible creepy and distraught vibes. We aren't oblivious and knew that there was a strong chance that this man had ill intentions with these girls, so we felt like we needed to do something. So anyway, creepy man who terrorized girls down the hall, let's not meet again. If we do, it won't end well. Also, you might want to pick up some adult diapers. Update: the girl who lives in the apartment was luckily not home when this all went down. She ended up texting us, so we explained what happened, and she was obviously freaked out. She called the landlord, who called us to get our side of the story, and she believes it had been an old tenant who was subletting over the summer that constantly got locked out. He would come back drunk and bang on his door, and one time actually broke it down. It's hard for me to think that it was the same guy, as he didn't start banging on the door until we mentioned that a girl lived there. Also, this apartment was a floor above and a different spot than the one that the old tenant was in. While on my way to work at the apartment complex, I saw something unnerving. Us employees typically use the back door with a keypad to get in the leasing office. So I was on my usual walk along the sidewalk that eventually brought me to face the bedroom windows of a few apartments. My gaze was aimed upwards towards the windows as I came around the bend to the back door, and I noticed something strange. At first, I thought it was a towel that someone draped on the door, but as I walked closer, I realized I was wrong. It was a person standing in the window with a sheet over their head. They were staring at me. A chill ran down my spine, and I realized how out of place this was. The keypad was directly across from the window, so I hurried up and pushed the code and let myself into the office. Once inside, I looked out the glass panel of the door to find out they had gone. I don't know if they had ill intentions or if they were just trying to scare me, but it's the strangest occurrence I've ever experienced.